Through the Gates of Death. Dion Fortune. Chapter 12. Communication with the Departed. The question of communication with the dead is a vexed one. Some people consider it entirely free from any element of harmfulness or even error, and feel it is not unnecessary, but even blasphemous, to try the spirits whether there be of God. Others, and among these are many occultists, consider any attempt to communicate with the dead to be open to grave objection and harmful to both dead and living. As in most other questions, the middle way between the two extremes is the way of wisdom. Let us examine these two viewpoints and see where that middle way lies. Let us try to understand the factors involved in communication with the departed and consider the principles that should govern our relations with them. For we have relations with them whether we are consciously in communication with them or not. As long as they live in our memory, there is a psychic rapport between us. As long as we feel any emotion about them, whether of love, grief, resentment, or fear, we are actively in touch with them. We are affecting them, and they are affecting us. We should therefore strive by all means in our power to achieve right relations with those who have passed over. And the most effectual way of achieving right relations is to process accurate knowledge of the interlife conditions. The person who has recently passed over is still in the same consciousness that he was upon the earth plane. He awakes from the sleep of death into which he has been thrown by the great anesthetist in exactly the same frame of mind as he was in prior to his passing. In this state he is readily accessible from the earth plane. This condition soon fades, however, unless his memories be renewed and kept vivid by communication through a medium, provided the disembodied soul is of normal and harmonious character. It does neither the dead nor the living any harm to exchange greetings during this phase of the disincarnate period. In fact, if the departed soul has any unsolved problems upon this mind, or is anxious concerning his dear loved ones, it is of the greatest advantage to give him the opportunity of unburdening himself and completing any arrangements that he was unable to make before death came upon him. Souls sometimes cannot rest until they have done this, and remain in this intermediate state, anxiously trying to make themselves heard upon the earth plane. To such souls a medium can be of the greatest service. We must always remember, however, in dealing with the departed, that in a normal death process this phase is completely brief, a matter of months at most, and that if we keep the attention of the disembodied soul focused upon the earth plane by continually calling him up through a medium, he may fail to fall into the second sleep which heralds the second death. We may in fact cause him to develop astral insomnia, and he will walk, as the old phrase so expressively put it. It is possible for spirits to become earthbound simply because they are kept from the astral sleep too long and adapt themselves to an intermediate condition instead of going on with the death processes and attaining to the next phase of the interlife states. Generally speaking, while it may be justifiable to get through once or twice to those we love after they have passed over, it is inadvisable to keep on doing so, because it is bad for both them and us. They, on their side, ought to be left in peace to get on with the tasks of their new life and to enter fully into its experiences. On our side, too, certain things have to be taken into consideration. Contact with the non-physical states of existence have a peculiar effect upon the living. tend to draw them away from the plane of objective life and to discoordinate consciousnesses. This occurs even when the communicating entity are of the highest type, and it is well known by all who have had experiences in the matter that precautions have to be taken to close the gates behind us each time we return after having issued forth from the house of flesh. People who are uninstructed in these matters do not understand either the necessity or the technique of these processes. The medium of high type who is working under good guides is looked after by the guides themselves, who will see to the closing of the gates from their side of the veil. But the sitter who has no guides to protect her may go out from the seance room with her head whirling with the experiences she has been through, and if susceptible may even be in a semi-psychic state herself. To clairvoyant sight she will appear surrounded by a host of beings who have attracted to her sphere during the seance and who have not been dispersed at its closing. Trained psychics, be it noted, tend to forget their inner plane experiences as soon as the gates close behind them, and memory remains in abeyance until it is recalled by the concentration of thought once more upon the inner planes. It is very necessary to the health and stability of the psychic that he should be able to keep the planes of consciousness strictly separated. And this is one of the first things he learns to do when taught the technique of the mysteries. The inexperienced sitter has no such technique and may have no one to advise her, and the consequences are apt to be unsatisfactory or even disastrous. She becomes incoordinated and unsettled upon the physical plane, credulity growing with what it feeds upon, until the bounds of rational living are overpassed and mental unbalance becomes apparent. The question of research by trained investigators is upon a different footing. For the most part, they are dealing with a different type of entity to those who come at the call of the bereaved. They are dealing with entities who are consciously and intelligently cooperating in the research, or who have come at the bidding of the cooperating entities. Moreover, the investigators, being experienced, know how to conduct their researches without injuring their communicators. It is a natural impulse for those who have lost a loved one to rush to any source that holds out a hope of renewed contacts. But caution and discrimination are needed when doing so. It is not enough to obtain an evidential message, but we must satisfy ourselves that we are obtaining it under conditions that will not injure either the dead nor the living. And these are conditions that have to be carefully observed with due regard to all the circumstances of the case and the temperament of the disembodied soul. The spiritualistic movement has rendered an incalculable service in bridging the gulf that used to separate the living from the dead. The fact of the survival of bodily death has been established beyond any possible question by any reasonable person who will take the trouble to acquaint himself with the evidence. If we want to do the best possible thing for those we love who have passed over, we will accept the fact of survival upon the basis of the evidence already available to us, and leave those we love to go on their way in peace. If all is not well with them, they themselves can take the necessary steps to get through to us. Let us leave the initiative with them. It is far better for all concerned not to call them back for any save the greatest reasons. But on the other hand, if a psychic spontaneously informs us that someone wishes to get in touch with us and gives clear evidence of the genuineness of their message, we should not hesitate to respond. But here again there is need of caution. Human nature, being what it is. For cases have been known of psychics who, whenever they hear of a death, take steps to get in touch with the relatives and induce them to sit at so much as sitting.